Hi there, my name is Jean-Paul Hübner. Frequently I get the question, could it be useful to study, besides anatomy, also embryology? Well, I have to admit, it depends. Let me explain. I began myself to study anatomy somewhere in the year 1981-1982. And right at the beginning I noticed that several questions always come back. Like for instance the question, where do all the structures come from that finally determine this or that specific form? Consequently, next to anatomy, I also began to study embryology. However, in the beginning I noticed a number of problems, because most authors use so-called chemical parameters to explain why a certain form changes. Now, my personal approach of form of the human body is not so much chemical but much more physical, because in my practice I have a more manual approach of the human body. So in the beginning a number of questions simply stay unanswered. This changes in 1985, because in 1985 I receive a book written by Professor Blechschmidt. He, unlike his colleagues, uses a different kind of concept. He uses the concept of the morphogenesis. Now, the concept of the morphogenesis does not use chemical but much more physical parameters to explain not only why but also how a certain form changes. Moreover, they describe these changes of form by so-called developmental movements. So you could say that the concept of morphogenesis equals the concept of morphokinetics. When we now study the human body in this concept, we see a number of conclusions. For instance, that every change of form is always the consequence of very simple principles of nature. Principles as, for instance, form is always the consequence of its structures and their positional relationships. Another principle is that these positional relationships always result from the so-called developmental movements. And these developmental movements, on their turn, in fact, they are always the basis for future functional relationships. And now it becomes interesting, because these principles of nature, used in the concept of morphogenesis, or if you want to, in the concept of morphokinetics, these principles of nature, we also see them in the concept of Andrew Taylor Still. After studying more than 35 years anatomy as well as embryology, I am more than ever convinced that embryology, the knowledge of it, is useful, especially when you see it in the context of the morphokinetic development. It gives us an insight in the principles of nature and helps us to understand how these so-called anatomical relationships become functional relationships. Not only during the lifetime of an embryo, but during our complete lifetime. Because we should not forget that the principles of nature are valid at all times. So yes, embryology helps us to understand form and function. And this not only in theory, but also in practice. Thank you very much for watching this video.